have public to charter school choice. And this year, we have the V word. I loved it when we talked about this with Governor Daniels. Todd will remember this. We're all sitting in there. Of course, I ran like Governor Bush. I ran as a voucher candidate. So as superintendent, I was public school superintendent. I was pro-voucher. When I always say, hey, I was one of you, my former colleagues say, no, you were never one of us. But we were sitting in Governor Daniels' office, a year ago, December, and Governor Daniels says, okay, guys, we're going to roll this out. Now, this is called an opportunity scholarship, right? And we're going to stay away from the V word. I looked at him, I said, hey, pal, the cat's out of the bag. I ran on that in 2008. So we believe competition includes choices for all children to go to the school of their choice, be it non-government, public charter, traditional public, and we should just totally blur the lines that children are confined to the geography where they live. The second piece of the structure is freedom. Again, I'm one of you superintendents, and I used to sit in my office thinking, you know what, I could fix some of this crap if I didn't have the constraints. If I could manage my human capital like a good leader manages human capital, if I could recognize and reward really good teachers, frankly, if I could get rid of those that don't do anything in the classroom, if I could do that, I could fix this. If I wasn't constrained by a collective bargaining agreement that had some of the most adult-centered language you'll ever imagine in it, I could fix this. I'll give you an example. If Howard Fuller and Tony Bennett were hired to teach in Fort Wayne Community Schools, will next year be our largest school district in the state, and we were both hired to teach, Howard Elementary School, and for some odd reason, maybe the economy went into the tank, we had to reduce staff. You know how Fort Wayne Community Schools decided who stayed and who went? They added up the last 4 digits of Howard's Social Security number, the last 4 digits of my Social Security number, and the guy with the highest sum wins. That's a good one, isn't it, Howard? We had other people that weren't quite so sophisticated mathematically. We flipped coins, drew straws, rolled dice. One district said, we don't care how you do it as long as it's totally by chance. It was mind-boggling. So I always said as a superintendent, let me get rid of that stuff. So we said, you know what? Competition without freedom is punishment. So besides opening up competition, we did address flexibilities for our school leaders. And the last piece is accountability. We have an antisocial promotion policy. This year, third graders who cannot read on level will not move on to fourth grade. We grade our schools A through F. And this year, we drove to 2 school communities and said, your schools have chronically failed your children, and you are no longer allowed to operate those. So the idea of changing the system in Indiana is about competition, it's about freedom, and it's about accountability. And we did it with 4 very simple bills. We did a lot of it through rulemaking. The accountability piece is all through the state board rulemaking. We do have a public law, 221, that's our state accountability law. Our A through F is part of rulemaking. But our 4 bills are this. First of all, we passed what's called House Enrolled Act 1002. That is our charter school expansion. Our charter school expansion, Todd now is the chair of our state charter school board. It authorizes a state authorizing agency. It allows private, not-for-profit universities, colleges and universities, to authorize charters, and it ratcheted up accountability for charter schools. Frankly, Governor Bush mentioned me being a good leader. There's probably 60,000 teachers in the state of Indiana, or a good listener. It's about 60,000 teachers in the state of Indiana would argue that. But what he's talking about is I actually went out and probably 8,000 to 10,000 teachers. I went to gymnasiums, I went to auditoriums, I went to cafeterias, and I said, tell me what you're for. I know what you're against. It's everything I'm for. Tell me what you're for. And we listened to them. One of the things they said that was right, we have too many underperforming charter schools and you got to do something about them. So we put accountability into the bill. In our voucher bill, if a voucher school is a D or an F for 2 years, they can't take vouchers anymore. So it's about accountability. Okay, and 1002 did that with charters. Okay, 1003 was the nation's most expansive and fastest growing first-year voucher program. Now, I am a person that will tell you that the stuff about subsidizing education for the rich, that isn't what we found in Indiana. As a matter of fact, 85% of the 4,000 children that took vouchers in the 9 weeks we had the voucher program open for enrollment, I want you to think about that. In 9 weeks, we went from signing a bill into law to 4,000 children having a choice they never had before. I want you to think about this. 85% of those are free and reduced lunch children. 15% come from our state's rural communities. So when the superintendent said to me, those private schools are going to cherry pick, we're just going to be left with the poor disadvantaged kids in our schools, looks to me like the poor disadvantaged kids left. That was House Enrolled Act 1003. Then we moved to the freedom piece. We did away with teacher tenure. We require every teacher to be annually evaluated. And we tied evaluation to compensation, professional development, and personnel decisions. I got an email from a superintendent the Monday after Thanksgiving. He says, I have been a principal and a superintendent for 20 years. This marks the first day in my administrative career I have been able to fire a teacher in mid-year for being simply a poor teacher. But you know, we focus on that too much. We focus on that too much. In my life, I have a gentleman by the name of Byron Ernest. He was a 2010 Indiana State Teacher of the Year. This year, we had a Milken Award winner, Wilson Reyes, an English language learning teacher from a Hispanic background. Why can't we pay those guys what they're worth? And it was all because the system was broken. That we had collective bargaining agreements, in my opinion, that demean the professionalism of teachers, saying they're all the same. That assigned compensation to things that don't matter, like degrees and years of experience. And we got rid of all that. And then we went to the final step, which was Senate Enrolled Act 575, which was collective bargaining reform. It basically says that 4 digits of the Social Security number can't happen anymore. It took out seniority. It took out all language that was not focused on children. And by Christmas of 2011, for the first time in our state's history, since Indiana's collective bargaining laws were passed in 1973, we had 292 out of 292 school corporation contracts settled. I never thought I would be associated with labor peace. So you know what that means? 292 districts in our state, they were worried more about educating children than complaining about their collective bargaining agreements. And that's good for kids. And as I said before, we ratcheted up accountability like never before. So I am here to tell you, legislators, I'm here to tell you, community, this can happen. And the good news is every academic indicator in Indiana is up. Our I-STEP scores have been increased by 6 or 7%. Our graduation rate has increased by about 6 or 7%. And most recently, Indiana, over the last 2 years, was recognized as the second most successful state in the United States for advanced placement success. So you know what? It works. It's amazing what happens when you put pressure on the system, as Howard said. Now, I'm going to wrap up with 4 simple rules, and then I think Howard and I will take some questions. As you move forward, I have 4 very simple rules that I believe everybody must follow in pushing for this type of change. 1, never let a discussion start or end without it being focused on the children. You know, we love to talk about education reform, just like the lady asked Governor Bush. We love to talk about the things we passed and the things we did. Well, ladies and gentlemen, sexy legislation passed doesn't educate a child. So this entire discussion must start and end with our children. And I could go through every one of our initiatives and show you how it positively impacts the lives of Indiana children. And I would ask you, as you move forward in the days ahead, never let the faces, the names of the children leave your heart. That's what this argument's about. It's not about adults. It's about our kids. Number 2, go big or go home. Go big or go home. Don't nibble around the edges. Don't do one bill this year, one bill next year, one bill 5 years from now, and give yourselves a break. They're not going to vote for you anyway. Okay? I mean, seriously. They're not going to vote for you anyway. Why allow it to be like 8 years of being mad? If you're going to start a fire, start a forest fire. 3, on my nightstand, right next to William Zhao's book, is a little wooden block that has a little saying laminated on it, and Todd has promised me that when I die, he will have it engraved on my tombstone. Gentle pressure, relentlessly applied, yields results. Now, my wife just keeps telling me to remember the gentle part. You know, Governor Bush says it so well. Success is never final, and reform is never finished. It's gentle pressure relentlessly applied every day. Every day. What can you do to put pressure on the system? And be relentless. Be relentless. And my last piece of advice, stay on offense. Stay on offense. We sent 100,000 emails twice a week to Indiana educators during our legislative session. We informed Indiana educators what was going on every day. The first week we did it, we got about 800 responses. Some of them were like, you know, you rotten SOB, don't ever send me another email again. I think that one was signed off by Love Mom. But we went to their schools, we went to their communities, we did town hall meetings for legislators, because you know what? They legislate a whole bunch of stuff, not just education. And we communicated every day. And you know, by the end, that 800 dropped drastically, and even some of them said, I may not agree with all this, but you've never lied to us. You've told us what you were for, you've kept it in front of us, and you know, we may not agree with it all, but we admire you for at least keeping us honestly informed. So I would say if you remember the kids, you go big or go home, gentle pressure relentlessly applied, and communicate, 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 you can be successful. And I ask you in Louisiana to be successful. Because I got 150 folks that work on the 3rd floor of my building, and I want to beat them over the head with your success. And move forward with the hearts, the minds, the names, the faces of our children, our future, our country's future. Move forward with them in mind. Thank you, and we'll take some questions.